buffering. So we are almost going to start. I'm just waiting so it doesn't echo over here. But let us know what your favorite potato is in the chat. Connect based on your common favorite potatoes. Network with each other. All right, we are live. We are so excited to have Minjun on for what I wish I knew earlier in my design career. Minjun has an amazing presentation prepared for y'all. And if y'all are new to Design Buddies, I'm Grace. I founded Design Buddies back in April of 2020, and we've grown to many, over 20,000 people today. And we have a lot of events like this, mentorships, and a lot of resources in our community. And we're just here to grow and provide resources for our design community for free and be inclusive and really wholesome. So if you don't know what we are, definitely check us out on Discord. And we're also on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And you have lots of events like this. And I'm also full-time a product designer at Electronic Arts. I see some of y'all from EA in here as well. Thank you all for tuning in. And for the format of today's event, I'll pass it on to Minjun really quick. Minjun will give her presentation. And while, if you have questions, please put them in Slido. The link will be sent in the chat. This is so we make sure we don't miss anyone's questions, and you can upvote each other's questions and we'll prioritize them. And this event will be total an hour long. And at the last 2 minutes at 5:58 p.m. Pacific, we'll be taking a group photo in a way for our Instagram story. So y'all can think about what kind of filter you want, put on a potato filter if you want. We're just really playful in here. Sometimes we bring a stuffed animal in our photos if you've seen on our social media. And so just get prepared for that 2 minutes before the event ends. So with that, I'll leave the floor on to Minju.
So let me share my screen here. So can all of you see my screen?
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Minjun, and I'm currently a UX designer at Amazon, and I'm living in Seattle areas. So yeah, so I'm happy to meet with all of you and share my learnings throughout my career. So before we start, I want to say all opinion I will share throughout these presentations are all my personal opinion. They are not representative of my employer. So that means it will be a very honestly conversation for me to share and talk about my UX design career, as well as my reflections, and hoping by the end of these sessions, what I'm going to share will be also helpful to you as well. If you are looking for your first UX design job, or you want to transition into UX design field, or you just start out in UX design as a junior designer. So here is agenda I want to cover for this presentation. First of all, I will talk about my journey, and then next session, I will talk about my job interview tips. And going after that, I will share my career tips. And in the end of this session, I will have a Q&A session. So happy to answer any question you have about job interview or early design career. I don't know how I can move my mouse and then click on the next slide. Okay. So, so a little bit about myself, how I get into UX design. So I graduated from University of Washington, Seattle, studying human-computer interaction design at UW. So during my time at UW, I built solid foundation in UX design and research. So after graduation from my school, I landed my first job in UX design in a really small, messy startup company in Boston areas. So after working at the startup company for 6 months, I moved to a larger company, Wayfair. So I was a UX designer at Wayfair warehousing team, and I'm building the tool for warehouse associate and their supervisor. So after Wayfair, I moved to Amazon. So right now I am the UX designer at Amazon, working on the global Prime experience team. So my team is responsible for helping to define and improve the Prime member experience globally. So through you see a lot of doggy photo, doggy GIF in my presentation previously, but actually I'm a cat person. So I have a 2-year-old cat. His name is Kirby. So I always play around with my cat in my free time. And outside my work, I also really just enjoying the food and looking for the authentic coffee and the latte. So I always like cooking at home since pandemic, and I also love to explore like different restaurants and hang out with my friends. So first of all, like you might have the question, why I want to share this topic. So since for the past 3 years, I have been working at both a very early age startup company as well as larger tech company like Wayfair and Amazon. And during these 3 years, I have been fortunate enough to working at 8 different product domains, including like online education, two-sided marketplace, supply chain, logistics, subscription, and growth design. And during these 3 years, I have been going over like hundreds of the job interviews. And initially, I didn't get the offer from most of the company I went for the on-site. But to right now, I actually can get every offer from almost the company I go to the on-site. So it's pretty much from like 0 to hundreds, this kind of ratio change. And I have been also love to give back to our design community. So since last year pandemic, I have been offering this kind of free mentorship session and have talked to hundreds of like students or younger designers who want to transition into the UX design field. So a lot of questions I'm going to share next on the question I frequently ask during this kind of mentorship session. So I think it's a great chance for me to take down this question and think about it in a very like formal way. So this is why you're going to see the presentation today. And next one is, in the next couple sessions, you will see a conversation between Minjun in 2018 and Minjun in 2020. Because I have been going over through the same process, the same struggle, almost the same question, the same problems, almost you like if you are looking for your first UX design job or just starting out in your UX design career. So the first part is what I wish I could learn earlier about my job interview. So this is the top question I've been asked a lot is, and also I personally was very struggle with when I just applied for my first UX design job. I don't get enough interview, although I applied for the job like every day through LinkedIn, like Glassdoor or Indeed. So here is my first tips, just apply. Because like no matter, don't care about like how many years experience this job position they are highlighting. So just apply as many as possible and don't limit yourself into a specific like city like Seattle or San Francisco, because the most important thing for you currently is to find a company who want to offer you the interview opportunity, and just apply to this position, not just limit it into the new grad position, since there's not enough position for the new grad. So when I started out, I just apply as many as possible, and I didn't really care about this like job, like how many years this kind of experience they require for apply, because who knows, maybe you will get one of the interview from the company who requires 3 or 4 years experience. So after you apply and tons of interview, I'm sure you will get some sort of interview. So you will use this kind of chance to practice a lot and build up your like communication and presentation skills soon away. The second one is use UX design and research keyword in your resume. So after you already apply tons of the like job application online, you still don't find any like opportunity. So I think at that moment, I think you should be checking out your resume. So checking out like, do you really use the UX design keyword or any kind of UX language, this kind of job opening, job position they are highlighting. So for example, if you pull up 3 to 4 job position, job description at this company, most of them will talk about work with product manager and engineer to deliver like design markups. So in this way, trying to think about how you can reference the language they are already using in their job position to your resume. So typically what I did was I will rephrase it into like partner ways or collaborate with the PM or engineer to deliver like wireframes or deliver the high-fidelity markup in the end of the design process. So trying to highlight the keyword they are using in their job description, because the recruiter, they don't have time to looking at your resume so carefully. So how you can make your resume stand out is just trying to use the UX design language as many as possible on your resume. And the third tip is make sure that you will make your portfolio concise, unique, and appealing. So when I'm reviewing most of the student designer portfolio, one of the mistakes I have ever seen is we will have a really long, like scrolling, like UX design portfolio with everything, like including like every like research, competitive analysis, wireframe or journey map I did for this project. But for the hiring manager, they don't have time to really read the entire case study. So how you can make your story concise, but point out what you did contribute to the final design, what you did contribute to the team is really crucial throughout the entire story. And you can make it very unique by point out what is your contributions and how these deliverable, like how these wireframes shape the final design. And the last thing is because most of the designer hiring manager, we are the visual learner. So how we can leverage our UX visual design skill to make our online portfolio visually appealing, that will be a huge help into your portfolio, because it will immediately catch people's eyes. So trying to keep in mind like how you can make the language concise, story concise and unique, and make it visually appealing by using a lot of like hi-fi image, high resolution image. And another question I often ask was, I don't know about how I can present my portfolio during the interview. And I think this is a really big topic. So I want to just share some top tips I want to share with you today. The first one is select the project that show a wide range of the product design skill sets with your unique strength, which means here is, especially during the interview process, usually you are asked to present 2 or 3 projects. So typically, I will select one project that showcase my end-to-end product design skill set, from like discovery research, user testing to the end of like visual and interaction design. And the second or third study you are going to select should reflect on a specific unique strength. Like for me, if I want to showcase my service design skill or system design thinking, I might present one of the project with a journey map that can reflect this specific skill set. And also, like when you're selecting these projects, make sure that it aligns with the job description, it aligns with the skill set this company they are looking for. So selecting the project by your intentionality and trying to figure out what kind of skill set, what kind of strength I want to communicate, I want to showcase through these 2 or 3 case study you are going to present. And another thing is, it's really important to show both of your hard and the soft skill during the presentation. And I think most of the students, especially if you are graduate from the HCX school or graduate from UX design bootcamps, you might have a pretty good understanding on what is the hard skill. So the hard skill includes 3 parts. One is like product thinking, like how you figure out this is a real like user problem, how you reframe the problem statement. And the second one is interaction design skill, and then is the visual design. So it's very typically like we are doing a really great job in showcase our hard skill when we are presenting our design work. However, like most of the early on students, they they don't showcase their soft skills through their presentation, but this is one of the very important part this hiring manager they are looking for, because we are hiring the teammate, we want to collaborate in our everyday job. So the soft skill, including communication, how do you communicate with the stakeholder, how do you collaborate with the PM and engineer, as well as your self-awareness. These three are really crucial if you can showcase during the portfolio presentation. So I can give you a brief example about how you can demonstrate your hard skill and soft skill during your presentation process. So for instance, I have a few options for solving blah blah problems. And option A, I was testing really well with the user, and the user gave me a very positive feedback on the option A. However, when I presenting the option A with my engineer and PM, my engineer point out that it is not possible for us to implement the option A during the phase 2 launch. So at that moment, as a designer, how do you make a trade-off? How do you respond to the engineer feedback? And what is your next step and action item? So this is something the hiring manager they want to hear, and you can demonstrate through the presentation. So showcase your option B or option C, that you made a trade-off between technical constraint, user needs, and the business requirements. And the third thing I want to say is storytelling is the key. Is key for every job interview. It's not limited to your portfolio presentation. So how you can craft your unique story that align with the job description, align with the company mission, will also help you stand out from other candidates. And usually, when I refer to what is the storytelling, I will say, for the storytelling, think about you are the hero, and you will have a lot of obstacle and challenge. And in this story, I want to see as a hero how I can solve the challenge, what kind of solution or proposal I think about in order to solve this obstacle. And it's not a linear process. The linear process means it's not a typical human-centered process. We learn from the school, we learn from the book camps. It is a process with up and down moments. For example, if I have this small challenge coming out because this is the technical constraint my engineer point out during this process, how I can think about the alternative way to solve these problems. And for example, if I just new to this team and this is the first large initiative I took on, so how I can onboard myself quickly and then build up the great relationship, build up a good relationship with my PM. It is also a story you can tell through your entire portfolio presentation. And the last thing I want to say is making it fun. So trying to think about how you can showcase your personality by incorporating some illustration you draw, or using some fun GIF you like, or even just adding a little bit emoji will also make your portfolio, the entire portfolio, fun and personal. Because keep in mind, they are always looking for a collaborative people they want to work with in their everyday job. So after I learned this job interview tips, and I practice a lot, and going through a lot of interview process, I finally land my first job. So however, here's come to my next session, what I wish I could learn earlier about my job. So for me, before I graduated from my school, I didn't have any formal UX design experience, industry experience. So I was really struggle with just everything I have ever encountered in my early career, including the first one. So I don't know about how I can work with my PM and engineer. So this is just top questions I think every younger designer might have in their early on career. I'm still figuring out how I can build the trust and the good relationship with my partner, especially a lot of engineer or PM. They are working in this company. They never work with UX design before. So what you should do, the first tip I talk to everyone is schedule a coffee chat with your new PM or new engineer lead. And through this one-on-one, through this coffee chat, like talk about like, have you ever worked with designer before? What is your experience by working with designer? Is there anything you wish a designer should know earlier when they are working with you? And is there any expectation you have when you are working with the UX designer? So trying to figure out what is their like previous experience, past experience, as well as their expectation when through these kind of coffee chats will help you understand their approach to UX design research. And another thing I did during this kind of coffee chat depends on how long you schedule for this coffee chat. I also have a slide, like document like who I am as a designer, what is my design approach and my typical design process. And if times allows, showcase some successful example about how you build up a great relationship and eventually will help your entire team launch a great product. Because if you can bring up this example when you are talking with your PM partner about building up a great UX design and product partnership, will eventually help you land a success project. That is really beneficial if you showcase such example. And the second tips I want to share about how to work with PM engineer is run schedule and run a weekly design review. So during this design review, designer will be a leader to present your design work, as well as you will be a facilitator to discuss this design with your team, with your PM and engineer. So trying to use this time to show what is your updated design? Like what is the last time that the feedback you got from the team and how you updating the design? What is your rationale behind these design decisions? And trying to use this time to gather the feedback from your teammate, from your PM or engineer as well, because everything like every time if you have such a conversation with the team, there must be something like change coming up during this kind of conversation. So having such regular check-in design review with the team will help you succeed during the project. And the third one is think about like how you can speak their language. So from the PM perspective, they care about the metric, they care about like how much efficiency we will increase for this project, how much retention rate we will get by adding this button. So if you understand their language, trying to incorporate their language when you are going through your design, when you are going through your design decision. So you can say something like, I move this button above because I think it will help us increase the retention rate because of the blah blah reason. And for the engineer, they are more care about how are you using any design system component, or are you using any existing design pattern from our design system? So they trying to think about how feasible your design it is when they are viewing your design markup. So trying to incorporate their language by saying that, yeah, so this is the component I leverage from our design system. So I just play around with the information hierarchy to make sure that it make the information stand out. So if you understand the PM or engineer, their language, it will help you conversation with these people way more easier. And the third, and the other question I often ask a lot during the conversation with early on designer is, I feel so stressed out when receiving the feedback from my manager and my colleagues. And I know even some of the younger designers, they can't really sleep really well because of the feedback they got from their works. So the first thing I want to say is, don't take feedback too personally, because they are talking about the feedback. It's more about the feedback on your work, on your project. It's not about yourself. So don't take the feedback personally. Will help you change this kind of mindset. And the second one is, feedback is a gift. So looking back in my career for the past 3 years, I have grown up a lot because of this feedback I received from my manager, my PM, my coworker. And because of the feedback, I can figure out what is my strengths and what is my opportunity areas and how I can improve my opportunity areas when I receive this feedback. And the third tip I want to share is ask why, always ask why when you receive the feedback. For example, like if you PM come into your desk and say, I don't like this blue button to be displayed on the left side. At that moment, you shouldn't push back in the very beginning. What you should do is to ask why you think it doesn't work in this context. What is your thought on this blue button? Why you think it cannot be placed on the left side? So trying to figure out their rationale, their reason behind the scenes before you have any like pushback or have any action item. So after you understand the reason, and you can discuss with your PM or engineer to figure out what is the next step or what is the next action item. And the fourth tip I want to share is, this is something I was also struggling with, is every time I will get a lot of feedback during this design review with the team, sometimes I didn't know about how I can respond for their feedback. And this is actually the feedback I got from one of my design manager before. So what I learned from my chatting with the senior designer and my design manager, I learned that it's just totally fine for you if you don't have the answer at that moment. You can say, that is a great point. That is an interesting idea. I never thought about this idea before, but I need to take a time to think about the solution or think about the next step. Could I circle back with you like this Wednesday or this Friday? So it's totally fine to say, I don't have idea for your feedback, and we can look back later on. And then another thing another question I encounter a lot, and I find it's really helpful to share here, is I don't know about like how to keep track of your design project, how to keep track of my design projects, as well as all this feedback or decision we have from everyday job. The first thing I want to say is document the meeting note from this design review you schedule, you lead. This is so important to get alignment with your cross-functional partner, especially sometimes the PM will ask you like, why we place this button on the left side a month later. But if you didn't document this after the meeting, as a designer, we can think about like the decision-making process behind that button. So what I'm typically doing is, after each design review, depends on like what kind of tool your company is using. Maybe your company is using like Google Docs or any other like internal like writing tool. So trying to document these three things in whatever tool your company are using. First one is, what is the key design decision with the rationale? Because it will be an easy reference in the future if someone asks me any question. The second is, document open question, something we discussed during the meeting. However, we haven't thought about what is the solution or what is the potential idea. So which will lead into the third part, which is the next step. So for the next step, it's really important to highlight who will be the person that is responsible for this next step. Because for this meeting note, it's not like something I keep for myself, for my portfolio. It's more about how I can get alignment, how I can get the feedback, drive the alignment with my cross-functional partner. So sometime for the next session, you will point out your PM's names on one of the bullet point, or you will highlight my names because I need to like create additional markup to I think about the edge case. So trying to point out who will be responsible for the feedback, so you can keep track of the progress when you are communicating with your cross-functional partner. And the other thing I find is really useful is create a design project wiki. So what I mean the wiki here is a centralized place for you to keep track of everything for this design project you own. So under this design project, typically I have a few sessions. On the top session, the project background, I will have a summary of who is the target user, what is the major user problem, what is the business goal, what is the metric, and what is our key delivery day for this project. And then below is the session for relevant docs, because a lot of time, if we don't have a centralized place to keep all these different relevant project docs, it's really hard for you as your teammate to find a specific link. For example, if I want to find a research project, if I want to find a research project plans or a moderator guide for this design project, if you don't have a centralized place, you have to just find it individually through the Google Drive, which is time consuming. And a lot of time, you PM or you engineer lead will realize you as a resource to find these additional research or other content document. So if you already have this design wiki at hand, you can immediately share your design wiki document with them, so they can find this kind of relevant document on your design wiki. And typically for this relevant document, I will also have a couple of different categories, including product, design, research, and contents, depends on what kind of stakeholder you are working with. And the third one is usually I will put my weekly meeting notes on this design wiki as well, so we can keep track of the progress and keep track of the next step and action item through this design wiki. And I found this thing is really helpful, and I having such a structure in mind, and also I share this structure with my designer on my team, and they find it's really useful, especially if you are collaborating with multiple stakeholder inside your organization or outside your organization. So the last thing I want to talk about is, a lot of time I have been asked, how do you deal with the rejection, obstacle, and all these challenge throughout your career when you first finding your first design job, or if you have any challenge by working with this stakeholder, or if you just have the challenge in your job, in your first job. So I will say the one thing so this is an older sentence, I just encourage myself to moving forward. So I always write down this sentence on my notebooks. So the first sentence is focusing on your primary goal, and everything else will follow. So for me, think about what is my primary goal is to become a better product designer. So if I don't give up this goal, if I just moving forward, there's nothing they can change my goal. So no matter what kind of obstacle or what kind of challenge, if I strongly believe that I want to reach my single goal, which is to become a better product designer, no one will prevent me from reaching my primary goal. So you can just keep moving, even though you will have a lot of challenge or obstacles through the way. And the second sentence I always keep in mind is, everything will be okay in the end. If it's not okay, it's not the end. So this is the sentence my mentor always shared with me. If I feel really sucks in that moment, they always told me that everything will be fine in the end. Just keep working, keep moving on, focusing on what is the problem we are going to solve. Think about the solution, think about the next step, and also think about the future. Everything will be fine. And the last thing is, so a lot of time we will see a lot of job announcement, I get a job in blah blah company, and as a peer designer, we always feel really stressed out, especially if you are still looking for your first job, and you are viewing this posts through LinkedIn. So I will say, last thing is who you are is not defined by any job title and any company you are going for, or any university you attend, because it's more about yourself, like how you grow up as a designer, as a human beings, and you should be really proud of yourself because you already accomplished a lot of things and you already overcome a lot of challenge, obstacle in order to get here. So don't feel really stressed out if you have any, like if you see anything or if you have some sort of the peer pressures. Be confident and be strong, be confident about yourself. You will eventually become who you are. And another thing I always tell my friends and my mentee is like, because we have 20 or 30 plus years to work in the company. So if you already have a company, if you already have a dream company and you get the rejection from that dream company, that's totally fine, because just keep moving, just keep working hard and smart, because we have 20 years. So eventually you will have a lot of chance, or you can choose the company you want to go next. And another thing is, thank you so much for joining me tonight, because it's also my first time to present it publicly with so many people in a virtual like environment. And also special thanks to my friends who also signing up and join this virtual meeting. No, and hello, yeah. So I'm so happy to share my learning and share my learning and reflection for the past 3 years experience in UX design, product design. And the next one is, yeah, right now I'm just happy to answer like any question you have about like early career or the job interview. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was amazing. I was recording some takeaways for our Instagram story. That's why some of y'all might be seeing my phone. But if any of y'all have any takeaways, feel free to post about them on like Instagram and Twitter, tag Minjun, tag Design Buddies. And yeah. And with that said, we have about 20 minutes left. So we'll go towards Q&A. There's a lot of great questions in the chat. And I will drop the Slido again. And if you guys have any questions, definitely put them on Slido so you can make sure to get to them all and upvote them. If there's any question that you see you want to answer, feel free to just get right to it. Otherwise, let's start with the top voted one is, do you have any tool or tips to improve storytelling on your portfolio? Like how, I know I saw in the chat that a lot of people were struggling with making the portfolio like too long. And was wondering if you have any tips for that.
Okay, yeah. So I think there are two parts of some immediately advice I can think about is, one is having a really clear structure for your portfolio presentation, for your case study. So what I mean about the structure here, it includes like the project overview, which we will point out that what is your role, what is your team structure, like what is the timeline and the goal. So having a project overview in the beginning of your presentation is really helpful, because a lot of time we will just skip this part and directly go into like research or the design process. And the second part is, before you jump into the design process, spending the time to talk about the content including like what is the user problems, how did you figure out this is the real like user problem, and if this is an industrial project, trying to mention what is the business goal and success metric. And one thing I want to highlight here, if you are the UX designer looking for a job, don't spend too much time talk about all this research activity you did. You just need to have a high level walkthrough about that I did blah, 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 blah. And here's the user problem. Here's the 3 user problem. And during the design process, I usually will structure this story into like challenge 1 and my solution, challenge 2 and my solution, challenge 3 and my solution. So I think typically a 2 or 3 challenge during the design process is enough to talk about during the presentation. And after you going through this design process, you will talk about what is the next step, what is your reflection, and any outcome or results for this project. So this is the typical like structure I'm using every time when I have the job interview presentation. And the second part is how to improve your presentation is practice a lot and practice with your friends. And also you can sign up for this mentorship. Like you can sign up and looking for like one time one-time mentorship session with this like designer or design manager in the industry. So right now we have so many platforms like ADPDs, you can find a mentor there. So trying to just use that resource to present your portfolio presentation with these people, and then you will get a lot of feedback. And after a few rounds of like feedback receiving, a few rounds of practice session, as well as getting the feedback from this mentor, I think you will have a better story than before. Actually, the other thing I just coming up on my mind is every time when I start to think about the story for my portfolio presentation, I will ask myself, what are the top three like moments, the moment I want to highlight? Because usually these are if you can immediately think about the three things coming for this portfolio, for this project, this might be something you should talk about, because this is memorable, it's a very valuable like experience you should highlight during this presentation. So yeah, so this is my answer for the first question.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
And definitely +1 to finding mentors, because that's how basically I did my portfolio. I struggled with a lot of y'all in the chat where I had it way too long, and I reached out to a lot of mentors on the ADP list to find out how to shorten it. And oftentimes, don't be afraid to ask for feedback, like what Minjun said, because feedback is not personal, it's about your design. So don't be afraid to ask for feedback. And that kind of covers the top 2 questions. So the next question we got, number 3, is how to improve on teamwork skills, because sometimes, especially as a new designer, and I know during interviews, they always ask like, how do you collaborate with people? So I feel like things like hackathons or any recommendations you would recommend to designers without a job to like get that teamwork experience.
Yeah. So I think, early on, I didn't have any experience when I didn't have any experience to provide an example, especially during this behavior question. People ask, how do you collaborate? So usually what the example I will grab is my collaboration with my teammate at school, or any like hackathon you have been ever through. So you can show the example about how you cooperate with the PM or engineer. And how, so the question is about like, how do you improve your skill in collaborate with your like teammate, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's like I said before, like trying to find a time on their calendar and grabbing a coffee, or just grabbing the virtual coffee chat with them, so you can know about each other in person. The second thing is like just schedule this design review session with them together. So after you feel more and more comfortable to present your design work with them, which means you start to building up a really great relationship with your teammate. And the third one is the third thing I will say is trying to invite this stakeholder or this teammate into this usability testing session, especially like when they hear like how your new design inputs a lot from the user. When the user they are doing this thinking aloud session during the usability testing, they will be really impressed by how valuable you are bringing into their team, because the design already improved the user experience a lot. So trying to invite these people into your usability testing session is also really helpful to build out a good relationship. But overall, I think a good relationship with your teammate is is all around like transparency and trust. So trying to know about like what is my role and what I can bring into the table, and don't be afraid to bring the value you can bring into the table if you are just like working with any senior PM or any senior engineer lead. So just because they will really appreciate your opinion as a UX designer. So they always really appreciate your perspective. So just speak up during the meeting. Yeah. And eventually you will feel more comfortable when talking to these people and share your opinion, and they will have more trust with you. And every time they will just let you make the decision if this is something designers should be responsible for.
Yeah, definitely +1 with all that. Coffee chats. I saw a question that's really related in the chat by Anna. Like, any common questions you would ask? I know earlier you mentioned like, how do you work with designers, but is there like any other question or kind of like key topics you try to get out of these coffee chats when meeting like cross-functional partners or like other designers?
Yeah, so typically I will try to learn from that have they ever worked with a UX designer before? What is their working style? Is there any red flags with such like collaboration? Is there red flag designer should avoid when working with these people? So trying to have a understanding about like there is past student working with any designer, or because sometimes if they are talking about like yeah, I did work with a designer, but when they was going through the example, you figure out actually the designer means the designer they mentioned here is more focusing on the visual design. So at that moment, you should trying to like talk more about like what is your approach to the UX design. And another thing is sometimes it's really hard for the junior designer to change like people mindset, especially they never worked with designer before. So in this kind of situation, if you have the design manager, I will encourage you to reach out your design manager during this one-on-one, because sometimes it's not just your personal effort to build the design and product relationship. Is more about like how the design senior leadership, they can also influence this kind of process. So if you are struggling with building the partnership with your PM or cross-functional partner, you should reach out and having such transparency conversation with your design manager as well. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Definitely. I like asking for red flags because these are like key to avoid these things. There's a lot of great questions. I'm going to go with a really interesting one. In the Slido, it's you mentioned how I'm sure like because a lot of people in design buddies are also job seeking, and the question is, you mentioned how your interview offer went from 1% to 100%. Can you talk about what you did to change this?
Yeah, definitely. So overall, like because I have, so there's a couple of things. One is since I already going through many interview, and then I figure out there are few like commonly asked questions. For example, what if you have a conflict with your PM? What if you have a pushback with your engineer? So if you already going through a different interview, trying to document what is the commonly asked question, and then you can prepare the answer for this question. So you especially this kind of way, this kind of method is really helpful if you preparing for your behavior question, because these are all the questions you have been asked before, and you prepare you prepare the example. So it's not really hard for me to just answer this behavior question. And the second part is, I think my storytelling skill set include a lot. For initially, I'm looking for a job, and right now I'm looking for a job because I know about like what kind of story they are looking for, what kind of skill set I'm going to showcase. Because not only, I think one of the very typical like great feedback I got was from one of the company I interviewed early on. Even though I didn't get a job offer, but one of the recruiter feedback was that the design team think about you have a really great hard skill in visual and intention design. However, they don't see any example about your collaboration and communication during the design portfolio presentation. So at that moment, I figure out that the soft skill communication collaboration part is something I need to demonstrate throughout my presentation. So definitely like when I have my presentation right now, I will incorporate this like mini story about collaboration and communication into my presentation. And the third thing is, because if you are practice a lot and if you already go through this interview, the interview is not the interview anymore. The interview is more about the conversation between two humans, like, and you should be really confident and comfortable by talking about like who you are, how you get into design, how you solve this problem, and how you design, how you present your design work. Because having such confidence in mind, they will see that they will naturally know about like you are so comfortable by answering the question and by answering this and by taking this feedback at that moment, and then you are so confident enough to justify your design decision, because they are looking for the designer who can speak up during this meeting, especially with this senior leadership. So you have to be really confident and comfortable enough during this kind of design review. And another thing I trying to just keep in mind when I was presenting my presentation or when I was telling my like behavior question story is, no one at no one in the room will know better about your design, because you are the designer who did this project. You should be the expert, know everything. So every time if you encounter any question, you should be really confident to say, I did this thing because of blah blah reason. And another small quick tip I want to share is also sometimes also okay to say, if you don't have the immediate answer to this question, it's totally fine to say, thank you so much. That is a great question. I haven't think about this perspective before, because it will also showcase you are comfortable to take the feedback, and you have such self-awareness when you answering this question. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Definitely speaking up is such an important skill. After working full time now, I realized that it's so important to make your voice heard. And we got a lot of great questions in, just a few minutes left. But one of the top few ones I kind of grouped together is, do you have any superheroes in design, or do you have any person you look up to who you admire their content, or any design resources or books that helped you along the way? Because we have a lot of also self-learners here. We're trying to get into design from self-learning, or just any resources in general.
Yeah, so definitely, I think ATP, this design body, this kind of design community is a great resource for you to just looking for the peer and also looking for the mentor for help. I think a lot of how I learned from past 3 years, I reach out to these people, and even just this kind of one-time coffee chat, I already learned a lot from these designers who are working in the industry. And the second one is depends on what kind of what kind of skill set you are looking forward. So for me, I want to improve my communication skill. So I always looking for the books talking about the communication skill set. I can share the link later on, if possible, because it's hard to just grab all the books named on my mind currently. And yeah, and the third thing, the other great resource if you want to improve your hard skill, is to looking at this Google Material Design Guideline, their website, as well as Apple Human Interface Guideline. I think these are the most powerful resource if you want to improve your UI skill set, because you need to know about what is their design guideline, what is the language they are using to describe this floating button or anything. So I think these are two great resources you should definitely looking out if you are really interested in a UI or design pattern.
Yeah, that's great. And we can also send an email of the books afterwards too, along with the recording, to all of y'all who signed up on Luma afterwards too. We're gonna go one more question, and we got a lot of questions about networking, and you talked about joining community. So do you have any tips on networking and making yourself basically networking, I guess, from a job point of view, trying to get into industry?
Yeah, so I think networking is more about you want to learn you want to get some career advice, you want to learn something from these people. It's not about I want to get the referral or I want to get the job if I reach out to this person. So if you have such mindset, when you reach out to this designer on LinkedIn, the message you trying to say is I am the early on designer, and I'm looking for some career advice or the advice on my portfolio presentation. So typically most of them, if they have time, they will accept the request. So you can ask follow-up question we grab 30-minute or 45-minute video call, and set up this kind of conversation. So I think for me, I always have the mindset, I'm curious about what they are working in different company, in different product domain, and then I really want to learn from them. So I'm not saying if I get the referral from blah blah company, if I reach out to this person. And the other thing is, during this kind of video chat you have with these people, if you really prepare the good questions, and also if you really showcase you are really curious, you have such growth mindset, these people are definitely willing to help you. Sometimes they will just ask me, do you need referral for my company, because I think you are a great fit for blah blah. So yeah, so just learning, be curious, and looking for growth. If you are trying to grow your network with this designer in the industry. Yeah,
I love that. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, we can take one more question, like, because we still have time.
Yeah. If anyone wants to do a group photo, definitely turn your cameras on. Well, one more really quick question and another advice another quote that I like that relates is, if you ask for advice, you get a job. If you ask for a job, you get advice. So it's really be curious. I'm gonna find a question that's like pretty quick. There's a lot of great questions. I'm trying to take 36. I think there's soft skills. So one of the top questions was, what are your preference between working with startups and large companies, and like which one do you like the most and least, or like why?
Oh my God, this is a really great question. This should be another presentation talk about like working in a startup versus a big company. So I think a few reasons, like so I personally prefer like working in larger company because of a couple of reasons. One is, early on, I really need the design mentorship. So working in a large company give you a variety of the like team like you can reach out to for the design mentorship, not just limited to your own design team, but also you can reach out to like other like team across the entire Amazon. And the second one is I think like learning about the process. Usually the big company, they have a really like typical and standardized process you can learn from. And also the third thing is about large company usually have the resource like by hiring different like UX discipline. So you can not just work with a designer, but also you have chance to work with content strategy, UX writer, like, and also UX researcher or other like visual designer. And they have a really like comprehensive design system you can leverage from their component library. And the last thing is more about, because I am the international student, so it's more for the visa purpose, it's more stable for me to finding a large company who can sponsor the visa, because it's only a few like startup, or usually the very small like startup, they don't sponsor the visa. So yeah, but I think like working in a startup company also have their benefit, because it's more easier for the junior designer to get into the industry, because there are so many like small startup companies that need the designer help. In early on, it's really important for you to get your first job, and then you can get into the next job or work in whatever company you are always dreaming of. So in my very first like job, I didn't really care about what company I'm going for, but I just need this kind of job opportunity so I can build up my resume. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. I definitely agree with a lot you said about the large companies. I feel like there's so many interesting people at EA I just like talk to and gain mentors that way too.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks y'all for coming. We're gonna do a group photo now and our wait for our Instagram story. So feel free to turn your camera if you want to grab a plushie. I always have this bear. Oh yeah, if you could stop screen sharing, that would be also great, so you can see everyone for the photo. Oh, by the way, if you want to connect with your buddies, we have a networking sheet where y'all can drop your LinkedIns. And I'm going to count down 10 seconds for a photo. I love your plants. I love your dog. And I love all your virtual backgrounds. And we're going to do a group photo. Oh my God, so many dogs and really cool bears. Wow, I really came out as a friend. And after do a group photo, we're going to do a wave for Instagram story. So make sure you stay for that as well. I'm going to count down 5, thank you, 4, 3, gonna stay smiling for a while because there's multiple pages. 2, 1, say Fluffle. Fluffle's the mascot of Design Buddies. I'm gonna do all the pages. Awesome. And we're going to do a wave for Instagram story. So feel free to wave, dance, dab. This is for our story on the gram. And you can also see the recording afterwards too. I love all the plants and dogs, by the way. All right, ready, set, wave. Hello, buddies. We are at What I Wish I Knew Earlier, my design career with Minjun. We had an amazing presentation. Make sure to check out the recording on our YouTube channel. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Awesome. So this will be posted on our Instagram story at design.buddies. And with that, that concludes our event. Thank you so much for coming. We have another event with ADP List tomorrow about accessibility in design. So make sure it's an announcement to Design Buddies. So make sure you sign up for that as well if you wish to come. With that, thank you so much for coming. And I'm going to stop live stream on YouTube. So bye, YouTube buddies.